Well, Marc, thanks so much for being here. It's long overdue and really, really nice to meet you. Appreciate you coming down to San Francisco to join us. I'll start you off with an easy one here. Just tell us what Canna Royalty is.
Canna Royalty is really a platform that is making strategic investments into the cannabis sector. Unlike a number of companies which are cultivation companies and grow operations in greenhouses or hydroponic facilities, Canna Royalty is more interested in what we would look at as higher value parts of the cannabis sector. So that would include IP, whether that's medical research driven or whether it's formulation driven, but something that gives the owner of that product something differentiable from the rest of the products. That would include drug delivery devices, which is a really important area to cover because at the end of the day, we believe that people will move away from smoking their medication and, at least in some respect, look for other forms of delivery other than smoking something. Mm-hmm. And so we've got a number of investments into drug delivery technology and devices. At the end of that, underlying a lot of that is our investments in know-how around extraction, because growing bud is one thing, it creates flower. From that, or trim, we're extracting into oil, and it's with the oil that we're making transdermal patches, sublingual strips, capsules, creams, lotions, tinctures, edibles, all of these types of products that I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I mean, as a long-term cannabis consumer myself, I like to smoke, and I always have. But if you look at the numbers, I think more than 50% of legal cannabis sold is now in non-smokables, as in edibles, as in tinctures, other vehicles, like you were mentioning.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, because cannabis has been kept away from society's use, that included research. So medical research was not legally able to be done on something that it should have been. So coming out of the woodwork are phenomenally talented scientists doing research on therapeutic uses of cannabis in all of these areas. So add on top, and by the way, that's not going to be smoked by patients. That's going to be taken through modern day drug delivery devices. That's a whole other element of that ratio that I think will go much more in favor of oils and extracts.
And I think that's actually going to be largely dictated by healthcare systems, by insurance companies or single payer systems that, hey, if you're going to have cannabis, we're not going to let you smoke it. We're not going to subsidize that. That's unhealthy for you in some other way.
That's right. We've spent, their position would be, we've spent the last 30 years trying to hone people off of smoking things. Why would we insure or prescribe medication that involves putting something back into your lungs after we've just been really more recently successful at trying to wash that out?
Yeah. So the thing that I love the most about Canna Royalty, I think, is you guys are so active. Every day I wake up and it seems like there's some press release, and some congrats is in order today. You've just finished really 3 deals that I read about. First is you're raising more money for your own round, that $15 million round. Congratulations on that. Very cool stuff.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did that come together? How do you get to $15 million?
Thank you. We have raised money. When you are creating an entity like Canna Royalty, which is making investments, there's a period over which money comes in and it's going out directly towards the investments and not being replaced unless you're bringing new money in. And so I started the company over 2 years ago, started it with my own capital, and then friends of mine, very close personal friends, some family office money and other partners of mine throughout my career were sort of the first private money, as in any private business. And then it really branched out, so we raised money at 50 cents a share, 75 cents a share, $1 a share, $2 a share, and then this financing was done at $3 a share, so certainly shareholders have been rewarded.
Loving that. I am a shareholder myself.
Good. Thank you.
I bought below that $3 level.
Great.
So yeah,
good. Thank you.
Good.
So there aren't, I think most people are very happy with the investment. I think they're going to continue to be. The rationale for that number and the process was that we are seeing, in a way, because of what you mentioned, our success in building the portfolio of assets has actually created more success, because people who are looking for capital see the execution of these deals are able to read it. We're a public company. They can go to our website, which is cannaroyalty.com. They can look at all the assets that we have, and I think they're getting compelled to deal with us because they see
the diversity.
Our board, they see the team, they see the different people that are analyzing these opportunities, and that's created more opportunities. And so right away with this $15 million, we have 3 investments, sizable investments. Our size of investment has gone up. When I first started, it was $500,000 to $1 million, and then it graduated to $1 million to 2 or 3, and now it's going to be larger than that as we've grown. So very exciting.
And how many times a year are you doing that 2 or 3 investment?
I think this year, so we're currently at what we would look at as 23 different assets in the portfolio, including one that we closed yesterday, which is a lab testing and genetics.
Anandia.
Yeah. Great acquisition. But so we'd be at 23 now, and I would say that we'll end the year probably north of 30. And of those 7 additional investments, 3 of them would be a very larger scale and different geographies as well.
Mm-hmm. What was it about Anandia that was so compelling?
Well, Anandia, first of all, the founders of Anandia are 2 very well-known PhDs in Canada that have genetics backgrounds, and genetics is obviously a key area in how we're cultivating, and more importantly for our company, the idea that I mentioned regarding IP, differentiatable assets, genetics plays a role in that because what we're driving towards is being able to have formulations which are customized to various conditions or symptoms. Sure. And if we can start generating a vape oil that has a certain CBD ratio to THC together with a terpene profile that works great in our own cartridges and treats someone of your size, shape, age, and feeling at any point in the day, yep. That to us is where we want to get to. So genetics in terms of the flower, the strain, and all of those types of things is hugely important. Second asset that they have, which is invaluable at the moment, both in the United States and in Canada, is testing. They're the only exclusive analytics lab for cannabis testing.
The only one?
The only one that's dedicated to cannabis. Okay. So there'd be diversified labs that can do your basic tests, but this is a group who clearly with their background is able to analyze for pesticides, heavy metals, contaminants, which is, as cannabis has now gotten this popular, rightly so, patients and people have said, hey, but what am I taking in here? I'm glad I have it, but what's the pesticide level? Yep. What did the grower use to keep the mildew and the contaminants off the plants?
This is currently a really big issue in California. I don't know if you've seen kind of the recent reports that there are far more mold and pesticides in cannabis in California than people would like to admit. And although we do have some good reputable testing facilities here, Steep Hill Labs, SC Labs, there's still a long way to go there, really a long way to go.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. So that's the second asset in Anandia. And then the third one, if it wasn't already compelling enough, to me is maybe the most valuable, which is that Anandia has, in Canadian terms, what's called a dealer's license. And so the companies that you would be familiar with or your followers would be familiar with are Canopy Growth, mm-hmm. And Afria and large grow companies based in Canada, publicly listed. And so they would have a cultivation license that's been granted by Health Canada at the federal government.
There's about 30-ish of those.
There's 30 to 35 now of those in Canada. A dealer's license is actually for a company that is handling pharmaceutical, active, narcotic, or controlled substances for the production of drug development and products. And so Anandia's dealer's license has a specific designation for handling cannabis and making pharmaceutical products with that cannabis, and also allows them to do extraction at a wholesale level and redistribute on a wholesale basis that extract to various of the licensed producers or import and export. So it's a bit of a black box right now. I don't think people truly understand it, but we've done a lot of work on it, and to me it's actually going to be a more valuable license from the Canadian perspective than the others that exist. So
the genetics piece is so interesting. I recently was pitched by a company and they just opened my eyes to so much of the genetics portion. Specifically in the IP. I mean, we talked about how you're very interested in IP, but the idea of even producing seeds that can't be cloned, right, and sort of protecting the origin there. So yeah, really interesting that's also a play. And then the other deal that you just did was with Rich Extracts, which I got to be honest, I get pitched on extract businesses constantly. It seems like everybody and their mother is doing that. Why Rich? What was interesting about Rich?
Rich is a special guy and partner. I think if you look up the Rich Extracts brand, and his site is richextracts.com, his reputation is synonymous with the highest quality concentrates. So he's based out of Oregon. That's our Oregon asset. He's been a great partner. He's now built what's the largest extraction facility at 30,000 square feet in Oregon. I'm guessing it's going to become, with time, as the laws change and hopefully remove the state borders on things, I think it will be one of the largest extraction facilities on the entire West Coast.
Okay. And
really it's just his reputation, his quality for the products that he's producing. His specialty is really in the area of concentrates and distillates. And so which
is such a hot part of the segment too.
It's
when you say they have great quality, how do you do that due diligence? I mean, are you up there dabbing, like testing it out, or?
I have to admit that I was not a big cannabis user throughout my, let's call it, student and adult life. Although I've become obviously a more avid user, partially to know what it is that I'm doing and investing in and being able to understand the concepts better. And part of it is because I've actually liked a lot of the outcomes of the things that work for me. And so I'm not, dabbing with a dab rig every night with my wife and kids at home necessarily, but I have tried it. I've tried all of the products which we're involved with. I've tried. So I wouldn't be the expert in the area of dabbing, but certainly when you look at Rich and you follow what he's doing, he would be, an award-winning concentrate producer by far.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm far more into flowers than I am concentrates, but it is a very convenient part of the industry, and opened up this new sort of like subculture, which is really awesome too. So 3 big deals in a short period of time. You have a fairly sizable team now. How many people on the team now?
There would be 15 on our team. I mean, the legal component of what we're doing is obviously a major part. So we brought in 2 attorneys on board because obviously we started to pay bills to multiple, and we still use a lot of outside law firms, especially in different states, who know that state's legislation better than anybody. But the idea of building up our own institutional intelligence and keeping it on board and not letting it go anywhere was hugely important. We have a finance team that has 4 or 5 people. Naturally, when you're invested in this broad a base of assets, then you need people tracking this on the finance side. We have a marketing team that I think is second to none. When you look at our brands and our products, we've either created those ourselves or assisted any of our partners in the area of marketing and sales and promotion. So our marketing team would have 4 or 5, and then the executive team would fill out the balance of that. We have consultants, though, that we use in areas where if we're not an expert in genetics or we're not an expert in the area of terpenes, and terpenes would be a good example. We have a consultant because terpenes to us right now is a very key area of investment. And when I go back to what I said was one of our focuses is using terpenes together with ratios and strains to create customized cannabis products. Terpenes is a huge area. So as an example, we have a consultant who's a worldwide expert in the area of terpene biochemistry that helps us with that. And we have other examples of consultants in the area who give us the expertise that we need.
Yeah, so kind of additional value in addition to writing the check is something that gets tossed around in the venture world a lot, right? And if you're Andreessen Horowitz or someone huge, they'll help you recruit, they'll do all these different things. But once you're in the Canna Royalty family, what does that mean? I mean, you talked about the marketing team, does this start with day one? How much time does your team spend with each of the portfolio companies?
I'm very happy to say that it varies and where we're more involved. If you spoke with those partners, they would say that we're great partners. We're not, when we make the investment, looking to run any of these companies. In fact, the best investment would be one where we're having regular dialogue, providing oversight and maybe advice from some of the areas that we're specialists in, maybe capital raising or the legal side or the marketing side, some of the functions that I mentioned. We're certainly not interested in operating the business day to day. If we're at that level, then we've probably made some mistake, and I'm happy to say generally that we haven't had to go down into that trench to go and do that. So I would say that it varies, and if there are functions that we provide, I think very collaboratively with our partners, it's in the area of management services, including, like I said, financial and capital strategies. Sure. Accounting, our finance team is very capable in terms of the accounting side. The marketing side is probably the one that's starting to get the most, appreciation from our investee, because that's the one that they can necessarily, like if we're talking about a partner who's wanting to, produce the new fancy packaging for their product, that's the one that has the most gratification for them. Yep. But we certainly provide
it's most visible.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. So it's a range of the different things, and it is true. It's real. It's not, as you point out, there are lots of private equity investors who walk in and say, "My money's different. It's going to be this," and on day one, it's why don't you cut 20% of your staff, and why don't you start sending me checks as soon as possible?
Yeah, it's a stark difference from a fund like Privateer, for example, that does all PE stuff. And I think basically the thesis there is there aren't good enough operators in the cannabis industry. We need to buy this and do it ourselves. But you obviously have a lot of faith in the cannabis industry.
Absolutely. I mean, we've acquired outright 2 different companies. One is the marketing company, which became our marketing arm. Mm-hmm. And the other is a cartridge company, because at the end of the entire race, I see cartridges and oils within cartridges and pens as being a major part of the market, regardless of what happens.
I keep one on me all the time. So
absolutely, especially as we get into the customized formulations and meter dosing, the technology inside the pen is starting to get better and better. And so all of a sudden, this is going to open up the market to not only ourselves, our parents and their friends, and everyone, I think, will end up enjoying and benefiting from pen technology. So we acquired a cartridge company outright. It's not our intention to go in, like you mentioned, some of the other groups out there that are just intent on buying companies to envelop them wholly. We'll do it in certain situations, but that hasn't been our strategy completely.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about deal flow for a couple of minutes. By my estimation, in cannabis, there's like 5 or 6 good deals a year, and everybody fights over them. Maybe it's a little different in Canada, but what's kind of your opinion on the deal flow situation?
Well, the availability of investable opportunities is high and getting higher, excuse the pun. But at the same time, the competitiveness for investing in those deals is increasing. So it's no surprise to anyone that capital is coming into this sector. People have seen the returns of certainly the public companies and what they're doing, and I think that's just snowballing and creating even more demand. So capital is rich right now in terms of availability to invest in assets, and so for that reason, it makes it a little bit more competitive for us. We benefit. A lot of people ask me about the new administration here in the United States and what that means to our business specifically. Mm-hmm. And in a way, even though I think all of us who want to see cannabis even progress even further may think that this administration may slow that down, and in some ways it may, or certainly pause things. For our business, it actually keeps multinational companies who, I guarantee, when the rules change at a federal level, will be investing in this sector. Yep. And that's the only reason that they're not, because a multinational company at this point would have risk in terms of getting in the sector with a Schedule I narcotic. But when that changes, the rules will change dramatically in terms of the competition for assets. And so we're still grooving in this time where those players aren't there, because when those players do come in, it's very competitive. The asset values go way up. And
I think what I hear you saying is that because you're a Canadian company, you're much more attractive because of the situation in the United States.
It's very strange in Canada. It's federally legal from a medical perspective. It's about to be federally legal from a recreational perspective. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
The government that was elected in Canada in part was elected because of their stance on cannabis, and they've really bucked up. They've kept on top of the timelines that they promised. In fact, even ahead of those timelines, and it's really happening. There's not going to be, these delays and new reports and new, debates about it. It's on track.
What's the biggest barrier left?
It's time, public consultation. There are a lot of stakeholders in this discussion, from the medical community to the patients to the distribution channels to the governments at the provincial level. So that's really just the consultation and the final drafting of the legislation, making sure that the age limits are correct, making sure that the product mix is correct. The advertising recently has become, a topical issue right now. And going back to the Anandia acquisition, probably at the very top of the list right now is how you test to make sure that products that are available for every citizen over the age of X, 18, 20, whatever it is, are safe and effective. And that's part of the reason that we acquired part of Anandia. But those are sort of the issues left to resolve. And then I think by 2018, Canada will be very similar to California in terms of an open in size and probably in scale.
Yeah, except you won't take 30% of companies' taxes.
There's that.
That's a big deal. That's a big
huge
deal. Yeah, I mean, kind of talking a little bit about the Anandia deal there, or rather Rich Extracts. I forgot to mention, it's sort of an interesting point that there's a pretty significant royalty component to this, which is kind of a classic Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary line to bring up a Canadian. But, how does that come about, and how do they kind of agree to that? I mean, 30% indefinitely of their gross revenue, right, of top line.
That's right.
Quite a bit.
It is. I mean, there are different structures for different partners. In the case of the Rich Extracts deal, we will have invested probably fairly close to $2.5 million to provide Rich and his team to build out that facility. And it's been no small feat for their team. I mean, the administration of the Oregon cannabis policy shifted from the OHA to the OLCC in the middle of this, which drastically changed the hurdles for the better, but higher throughout the process. So we had an extra spend, we had extra compliance that we needed to invest in. They've done everything right, but back to your point, I mean, it's the trade-off between assisting a group in reaching that goal versus their own ability to have found that from somewhere. Finding $2.5 million to go build an extraction facility may not be possible over a short period to get licensed, to get out there and be one of the winners in the area. It's a trade-off. And, some people could say, well, yeah, but now they're paying, but yeah, now they're in business because we went and did it together. And it's not that easy for the entrepreneur to reach a group. In our case, I think that's one of the benefits of the role that we play, is that we're able to raise the resources on our side of things and then invest them into cannabis assets at a time when the flows of capital for this sector don't look like the flows of capital for a normal sector. In a normal sector, an entrepreneur has a great idea, works within the regulations for that idea to produce a product, and can sit down with a private equity fund or a bank and get a loan, or maybe a third-party lender and get a loan.
Yep.
Most of those things don't exist still. And you run out of asking your parents or your friends or your uncle or aunt for money.
Friends and family.
And then you're stuck.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to build something at scale like this project is, you need an outside financing partner, and there's going to be trade-offs.
Yeah. So you can't get a small business loan for a cannabis company in Canada? That's still not available? No,
I mean, the banks will, at a very high level, do very basic banking services. You can have a bank account.
Yep.
But they won't provide any credit of any sort. There are credit unions now, regional ones, that have started to lend, but the 6 national banks in Canada, the broad-based country-style banks would still be opposed to any kind of lending. That's changing. I mean, I think that's another component of the Canadian legislation, which is how to handle the banking side. And I'm sure that those guys are watching this sector very closely because it is such a high growth area in the economy. Jobs and the businesses that are raising money right now are raising literally billions of dollars, and the banks really don't like being kept out of that type of activity. So
but it is a competitive advantage for people like you today. The fact that you can't go get a loan. I mean, I see a lot of businesses and I say, this is going to largely be a lifestyle business. What you need is a small business loan.
Absolutely.
Venture is not the correct structure for everyone.
Absolutely.
Right?
And there are other companies that are starting to emerge that look a lot like us, a little bit different focus in some areas, but and I wouldn't be surprised if more ventures related to capital allocation in the cannabis sector emerged and proliferated and things like that.
So I want to shift gears here just for a second. I mean, you are one of the most reputable names in this industry. Canada Royalty has a fantastic reputation, but you guys must work a ton. I want to talk a little bit about work-life balance here. I got a note that you have 5 kids. How do you manage that? I mean, it's just kind of crazy, right? It's a lot of time.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe it if I told you what my hours per day are. What's lost in that equation is probably the sleep component. Where normal people would sleep a certain part of the day, I sleep a lot less than that. I do it very willingly, and I've never been more enthused by anything in what I'm doing professionally. And yes, I have a large family for this day and age, 5 beautiful kids, and it helps that I live out on the West Coast, here on the West Coast, I should say, in Vancouver, and I'm able to get up early in West Coast times and follow what's going on in the East Coast, where my partners are and some of our investee companies are. And then I can go straight throughout the day, work the West Coast hours on the night shift, so to speak. But that all ends at a time where I can then, get into the father mode for taking kids to soccer and baseball and everything else. Do some dinner, some homework, put them to bed, get back to work. Wow. So I wouldn't call it balance. It's probably a little freakish for people to identify it like that, but it's out of passion, especially with where our company is right now. It's, as I've sort of commented on, the opportunities that we're seeing are phenomenal. And I feel like right now is the time and place to work this hard. And there may be a time later. I'm not that type of person probably to end up cooling off, but certainly right now it just feels like a huge time-based opportunity where if it's available, you got to go after it, because if you don't, someone definitely is going to, and it's an opportunity that you can't rest around.
Yeah, you must have an incredible wife.
I do.
Wow,
I do.
That's 5 kids.
I'm very lucky.
And you sounds like you're working about 20 hours a day.
It's probably pretty close.
18 hours a day.
It's probably pretty close.
Yeah. So you mentioned that this is really the time, and I think that there's this big cultural movement around cannabis. Like, you've got to get in now. If you're going to invest, you got to do now. If you're going to start your company, you got to do now. How long does that last? I mean, what's the window look like for this huge industry?
I think it's the way that I look at this is that it's in terms of the return profile that we're looking for, which is obviously high given the risk and the period of time that we're in. When I mentioned that conventional lenders and competitors for those assets aren't yet there, but they're getting there. I think the window for us, and it's not a bad thing, it just changes the complexion of the company in terms of how aggressive we'll be with the capital allocation. There may be a time when we slow down, let the assets build and start paying dividends, because if we can't deploy the cash into something that creates a return that we're looking for, then we really should return the cash at some level back. I don't think that's now, by the way. I get asked a lot about when I'll pay dividends and things like that. There are just too many opportunities to reinvest into right now. Sure. So I would say the window is probably more a function of what I'd mentioned earlier in terms of competitive capital and very large capital. I'm talking about tobacco industry, pharmaceutical industry, nutraceutical industry, consumer products, all of the different things that cannabis touches. there will be multinational companies and multinational funds that are looking to make direct investment into these areas. And that will close, I think, the window that we have now in terms of why we're driving so fast to build our portfolio.
Got it. Well, I think that's as good an answer as any, and a best way to wrap it up as possible. Thank you for being here. It's really, really nice conversation.
Thank you very much.
Great to meet you, Mark.
I really appreciate it.
Anybody that's a fan of this show knows a common theme is I really don't like bullshit investors. There's a lot of bullshit investors in the industry kicking tires, and you guys are the real deal. I mean, every day I wake up and you've invested in something or bought something, and so salute. Great conversation, and thanks for having, or thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
And thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.